Hi friends, I'm Simon. I'm going to introduce Kevin and say a few other things. I think I'm just going to use my big voice and not the microphone, if that's okay. Can you hear me okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, good, thank you. I want to say, first of all, welcome to the New Dawn Arts Center. I won't belabor this point, but there are a number of us here who can explain to you stuff that goes on at the New Dawn. And if you're interested, just ask us. My hope is that now that you found your way here, because some of you I don't recognize, that you'll come back for something. So look on the website and see what goes on at New Dawn. One more little plug before I leave that behind. New Dawn is always involved in fundraising. Right now there's a big campaign to try and complete the purchase of this building, so New Dawn will be free and clear as an entity. So what I'm planting in your minds right now is our speaker tonight will read for a while, take questions for a while, and then we'll sign books for a while if you'd like to buy them. So I'm thinking after you spend all you possibly can on Kevin's books, like so much that your children are left impoverished, spend all your money, whatever change comes back to you, maybe you could donate to New Dawn. We've always got the cash box, but that's the end of the press rate on that one. So welcome to New Dawn Arts Center. Welcome also to the New Dawn Writers Group. Again, since some of you are not regulars, I'll tell you a little bit about how that works. You have come, presumably on purpose, to Authors' Voices, which is our monthly speaker series. It's often a visiting writer who speaks to us, but today it's a mainstay of the New Dawn Writers Group, so I'll get to him in just a moment. We do that once a month, as you know, Tuesday, on a particular Tuesday at 6 o'clock, but the Writers Group actually meets almost every Tuesday. So if you're interested, I hope you'll come back. And those sessions are, I get the order wrong, but the first Tuesday of the month is fiction with Melissa Dorval. The second Tuesday of the month is memoir and nonfiction writing with Kevin Scott Hall. Am I getting this correct? The third Tuesday of the month is poetry with Fred Gerhardt. And the fourth Tuesday, as tonight, we have an open mic. So everybody who wishes to read, to share some work, their own or something they brought to read may do so. Hope some of you will stay. Like I said, Kevin will speak, take questions, sign books, then we'll have a brief pause, and then we'll head into our open mic night. No pressure, but if you'd like to stay, you're certainly welcome to, and please consider coming back. So we come now to Kevin. Like I said, not a visiting writer, but nonetheless a very distinguished writer, one of the mainstays of the New Dawn Writers Group. As this flyer says, he's a man of many talents, a sort of a Renaissance man, if you will. He has worked in the following kinds of writing, as well as others, but the list here in front of me says he's a singer, songwriter, a journalist, a blogger, an educator, and an author. And I think we're going to get a sampling of a number of those, if not all of them, tonight. Tonight is a particular celebration, 10-year anniversary of the publication of one of Kevin's books. It's a memoir called A Quarter Inch from My Heart, right over there. Great gift, Christmas is coming. And he will also give us a selection from his novel Off the Charts, also available tonight. He's even threatened to sing. We'll see how that goes, and to give us some readings from his essays and blogs. So it should be a treat. And I want to say again, welcome. Thank you for coming, and please make a big noise to welcome Kevin to the stage.
You know, it's funny you said that because it's June 25th, exactly 6 months from Christmas. So when these books came out, I actually was a visiting author because I was living in New York at the time, and I did come up to do a reading or two in the area back then. But now I've met new friends and new people, so you're being introduced to this material for the first time. This was my first book. It was a novel. It came out in 2010. As a lot of you know, I, for many years, have been in the music business, although with business you actually have to make a profit, right? I'm not sure if that's happened, but I was really, what spurred this on was, this started as my graduate school thesis, and then I finished it, and I think I've told this story in the writers group. When I finished the thesis and gave it to my advisor, it was in the third person narrative, and she said, you know, it's good, but can you redo the whole thing with Greg in first person? And so I did. So this is a story about the music business, sort of. And Greg is the 21-year-old narrator. He is just getting out of college. He's ambitious. and he meets Sally, who was one of his idols when he was younger, and now she's down on her luck, and wants to engineer her comeback as his big career project getting out of college. He gets a lot more than he bargained for. So, just by way of introduction, thinking what to read, I thought I'd read a few pages just from the opening chapter, so you get a little flavor of the world here and Greg, and then a little bit of an introduction to Sally. A 21st birthday is supposed to be a momentous occasion, but I had no idea just how momentous mine would end up being. I was out with a couple of buds celebrating my coming of age, and we ended up in a dive called Fat Bo's. We stumbled into the place a little after 7, laughing about I don't know what. The hoped-for big celebration didn't look promising. I bet it hadn't changed much since the miners had been in town. 3 walls were a peeling faded red paint, and 1 wall was brick. It was dimly lit with a few swinging overhead lights and red bulbs, and crooked sconces haphazardly lined the walls, many hanging by 1 screw. It was a neighborhood bar with older guys wearing Steelers caps and flannel shirts and drinking beer, and hardly a woman in sight. A few guys clacked balls around the handful of billiard tables scattered around the large room. The bar itself was long the entire length of the back wall, and curled around to a dark corner where, sipping a beer, one larger-than-life woman, big blonde hair, big tits, big round ass on the stool, caught my eye. We took in the scene for a few seconds before I turned to Rick Puccio, my ridiculously bulked-up friend and fellow wrestler on the University of Scranton team. What exactly is the attraction of this place? It's still early, don't worry, Rick said. Trust me, after the girls are out dancing with their guy friends who don't yet know they're gay at the Copper Penny, they'll come over here looking for action. University girls come in here? I found it hard to believe. So many of the college girls, although not angels, were from strict Catholic families and dressed the part, and I couldn't imagine them in here being hit on by these pro-magnets. Oh yeah, and from other schools too. Probably even Baptist Bible College, Rick snorted. Not to mention the locals, Pete Trueblood chimed in. They love to get laid by a university guy. Pete was blonde and 6 foot something, taller than both Rick and me. His life seemed pretty charmed to me, and he was already looking at a job offer in Florida through some family connection. Yeah, probably like to get pregnant by one too, I said. Rick and Pete were trying to cheer me up because Amy, my girlfriend of a year, and my mother hoped a nice marriage prospect, had just dumped me over semester break. I mean, you have to understand my thinking at this time. She was dumping me? Okay, maybe my grades weren't so great, but I was in line for the Bounder fortune, my father being head of Bounder and Lightning in Philadelphia. What's more, on that particular birthday, I was getting access to a $500,000 trust fund left to me by my grandfather. Another reason to celebrate. With my family connections, I could have been Ivy League, but I was more of an entrepreneur than a student, so I never worked too hard on the grades. But the University of Scranton had a good marketing major, and it left me close enough to Philly to remain under my mother's thumb. So anyway, our attitude that night was, fuck Amy, let's party. I'd been out to Scranton bars before, mostly downtown near school, but not this part of town. This was further west on Lackawanna Avenue, past the river and up the steep hill, the poorer part of town. Let's drink, I said. What are you having? Unimaginatively, we settled for Heineken's and I headed to the bar. The bartender, maybe late 30s, had trimmed, thinning blonde hair and looked like he worked out, an exception to the rule in this place. After we got our drinks, he went back to the blonde in the corner. She somehow looked familiar to me, but I couldn't place her. Do you guys recognize her? I asked Rick and Pete. Does she work on campus or something? Shit, dude, can you wait a bit? I know you're on the rebound, but are you going to pick up the first old skag you see? I never seen her, Pete said. If she's your type, you really are ready to get over Amy. Amy had short brown hair, was smartly dressed, and had a fawn-like manner. On the surface, when you got to know her, she could be needy and demanding. This woman at the bar seemed to be kind of the anti-Amy. I'm just trying to figure out who she is, that's all. I couldn't admit to them that I was strangely attracted to this woman. She must have been 40, maybe older, and she was a little out of shape in her tight clothes, but I liked her no-nonsense manner with the bartender and the occasional smoky chuckle that she let out every once in a while. She habitually turned over a cigarette pack in her hands. Scranton had recently passed a no-smoking ordinance in the bars, and shifted her attention from the bartender to the overhead TV, where a game of Celebrity Jeopardy was being played. "Let's go shoot some pool," Rick suggested, and we found an unused table several feet away. We didn't really play a formal game or anything, just sipped our beers and went on about school, calling shots and aiming balls at pockets. "So, yo man," he'd said to me, "you've got all this money and shit coming in now. You don't even have to worry about what you're going to do in June." "You think my mother's going to let me sit on my ass and collect?" I asked them. My father, Martin, at 80, still darted into the office every day. He had an amazing work ethic, but pretty much left me alone. My mother, Doris, was the boss. She was about 60 and very active in Philly society. She had me late in life, but my birth was not an accident. See, when my brother Marcus was about 18 and a freshman at NYU, he came home for Christmas and at one of my mother's big parties stood under the mistletoe and proclaimed, "Come kiss the Christmas fairy for good luck in the new year." That's how he came out. After that embarrassment, only weeks into the new year, my mother had happily announced to all her friends that she was pregnant. The way I look at it, she already knew Marcus was a lost cause to inherit the business, so she had to give it one more try. Okay, I'm going to skip a couple of paragraphs to get to Sally. I should explain something here. As a kid, I ended up listening to the crates of promotional CDs and 12-inch vinyl records that Marcus would send to me back in Philly. I grew to love this stuff and became quite an expert on all the artists. So while the other kids were listening to Puff Daddy and Alanis Morissette and the Backstreet Boys, I was becoming addicted to urban dance music. As a college student, I had to keep that passion in the closet. It was a weird thing, I know, but the bottom line is that I was not then and have never been gay, period. I just liked their music, what can I say? Pete shot me a doubtful glance. "And your mother's gonna go for that?" "No," we all had a good laugh and drained the last of our beers. "You want another? My treat." "Damn right it's your treat, for the rest of the semester," Rick said. I gave him the finger and headed back to the bar. The bartender was leaning on the bar, listening to the blonde who was commenting on Jeopardy. "You see that guy? He used to be on that courtroom show. What was it called? It was real big back in the day. Now he's doing this." She downed a shot of something. "There are no guarantees in this business." I smiled and turned slightly to look at her more fully. "Holy shit," I said out loud. I couldn't help myself. She turned her head towards me. "Got a problem?" "You. I mean, not you. I mean, you're not a problem." I was making a complete ass of myself. "What I mean is, I think I know you." "Is that so?" She regarded the bartender. "Rolf, get me another Jameson, please." "It's true, you're Sally. Excuse me, Miss Testata." "If you insist," she answered, lifting her beer and clinking her bottle to my empty one, which I was still holding aloft. I actually go by Teskewitz now. I remained motionless. Rolf, the guy's in shock. Get him another Heineken, on me." "I'm sorry, it's just that I am one of your biggest fans," I stammered. No, was is the right word. As you can guess, I haven't done shit for years. I didn't know I had any fans left. Thank you. "Come on, Sally, we're your biggest fans," Rolf said, setting down my beer and motioning around the room. "No, you guys are family. Big difference." "I just loved Bombs Away, of course, and I have some of your earlier records from when you were with Pillow Talk. Bombs Away was her big solo hit from several years before, and then she was never heard from again. But there she was in front of me, Sally Testata. That book was banned in the whole household by my mom. Gets a little racy. But my mom is my greatest supporter. She came to all the readings anyway. So this was my second book. What I'm really proud of is that the two books could not be more different. This one is a memoir, and it's a lot about faith, trying to do the right thing, getting caught up in something crazy. And as I've said in the memoir workshop, a memoir is different from an autobiography. This is not me growing up in Ashburnham and everything that happened to me in a chronological thing, which is what an autobiography would be. This is about two particular incidents in my life. One was meeting this drifter in New Orleans and deciding to take him in. It wasn't a romantic relationship. It was just, I liked him and wanted to do something good. The other was another incident that happened 10 years before that in New York, where I was attacked on the street and stabbed in the chest, and that is where the title comes from, because the doctor said the knife came a quarter inch from your heart. And there's a little, what do you call it, a metaphor in there somewhere. All right, so the first is from kind of meeting, or the year after meeting Maurice. I had gone to New Orleans with some friends in 2004, and they were friends from this area, actually. And the last night I was there, we were out at a bar, and we met this guy, Maurice, and then we had to fly out the next morning. So in that usual way, in those days, we had business cards, and I gave him a business card, and I said, if you're ever in New York, give me a call. Well, here we go. So this is September 2005. In late September, there were still lingering news stories about Katrina's aftermath, and plenty of blame to go around for everyone in government on the local, state, and federal level. The after effects had produced the largest migration of people since the Dust Bowl, with as many as 500,000 people displaced. The population of metropolitan New Orleans had been cut in half, some reports said. Most ended up in nearby Baton Rouge or Houston or Atlanta, but without a doubt, folks from the Big Easy were popping up all over the country, including the Big Apple. School was going well. I seemed to be a natural at teaching, and the young college students liked me despite my initial fear of walking into the classroom. I was fully engaged in writing workshops and graduate literature classes. I had saved some money from my previous job, but my income was significantly less than what it once was. So I had to be careful with my spending. One evening in early October, the phone rang. I was watching Jeopardy, but I just realized the Jeopardy theme in both books. Interesting. I was watching Jeopardy, but I've always had a habit of picking up the phone and then frittering away lots of time, talking to friends instead of studying or preparing for the next day's work. Hello, Kevin? It's Maurice, he began, and then added after my shocked pause, from New Orleans. Maurice, yes, of course. I remember. I was overly enthusiastic. How are you? I've been wondering how things have been going for you in New Orleans. Well, not so good. I lost everything in the hurricane, he answered. But I'm in New York now, he continued, sounding as chipper as I had remembered. You're kidding. Where? I felt a New Yorker's sense of unease. What does he want from me? This place in the East Village, just temporarily. How are you doing? My life seemed rather mundane compared to what you'd probably been through, but I summarized the recent details. At one point, the operator interrupted. Maurice needed to deposit more coins. Sorry, I'm using a payphone. Not wanting to waste more time and his limited resources using the phone, we made hasty arrangements to meet the following night at the Riviera, a restaurant in the West Village. 24 hours later, we were eating our burgers at the Riviera, and he had finished giving me the summary of his journey from New Orleans, which involved him and a neighbor pushing his elderly Aunt Josephine through the floodwaters and an old wash tub, a quick stop at the ineffectual Superdome, a long walk and eventual bus ride to Atlanta to deposit Aunt Josephine with one of her relatives, and his further trek to New York, ending up in the Bowery shelter. Maurice told all of this without self-pity, and by all accounts, he had hit the ground running in New York. He had signed up with job partners and was studying to take a test for a job that would involve teaching seniors about new medical insurance options. And he was working part-time at Magnolia Bakery, made famous by the television show Sex and the City. Maurice told me his parents had died in a car accident when he was about 12 years old. He had been and raised in upstate New York, somewhere near Syracuse. He had been taken in by a foster family. He mentioned a sister named Tracy. Nothing more was said about family. Maurice was dressed in black Dickies-type slacks, a Batman t-shirt, and a gray hooded sweatshirt. He wore sneakers that seemed to still have that wet, soggy smell, and he carried a backpack with all his belongings. "I'm not leaving anything at the shelter," he explained. "Why don't you stay at my place until you get back on your feet?" I said. I hadn't even paused. It was like I couldn't control the insanity that was spilling out of my mouth. The truth is, I had heard an unmistakable voice, kind of like Darth Vader, in my head, which said, "Take him in." I'm a pragmatic guy and cannot claim to have ever heard voices before, but I could not deny that that is what I heard. I believed it was the voice of God. Even so, within a moment of my offer, I thought, "Kevin, you are nuts. You don't even know this guy." From a practical standpoint, I had little to give. I lived in a walk-up studio in Midtown, the one large room bisected by floor-to-ceiling bookcases. On one side was my bed, a television desk and dresser. On the other, a small table and a folded-up, single-sized futon bed. There was something about his energy and optimism, that childlike quality, along with my desire to do something, as perhaps many Americans were longing to do, that firmed up my resolve. "Really?" His eyes grew wide with disbelief. He hadn't yet seen my small place, but evidently anything was better than the shelter where there had recently been a shooting. It would be so helpful to me while I'm studying for this exam. "Not a problem," I said magnanimously. "In fact, I'm going away next week, and you could feed and keep my cat company, so that would be a big help to me." It was like I had no filter, and my brain was not sending stop signals to my mouth. On the one hand, my mind kept trying to short-circuit my behavior, and yet my heart was fearlessly calm. Maurice asked if I was absolutely sure, explaining that if he left the shelter, there would be a lot of bureaucratic red tape involved to get him back into the system again. We agreed that he would finish out that week, which would prolong some sort of benefit such as food stamps, and then move in with me over the weekend. It looked as if Maurice was on a fast track to finding his way, working one job and studying for a new career, and with a can-do attitude that was very seductive for someone who wanted to help. I expected him to remain with me for about 2 weeks. And I'll see how that turned out. All right. And then the other thing I want to read from this book is the chapter that has to do with the other story, the assault. So I was assaulted in October 1994, so we're coming up on the anniversary of that. And this chapter is about coming home for Christmas. Just as some of you know, I know some of you know my parents, and my parents are in town. They're actually moving to Fitchburg tomorrow. It's a busy week. But we worked this out. That they were okay with me writing this is the memoir. We worked it. But it was a little bit of a contention at the beginning, as memoirs can be when you have to talk about family stuff. All right. So this was, I was home for Christmas 2 months after that attack. After the attack, my physical recovery time was rather brief, considering the near mislocation of the chest wound, but emotionally I was sliding. On the phone one day, I griped to a friend, wondering where the silver lining was. "The silver lining is, you lived," he stated. There could be no greater truth, but I was too bitter to hear it. I was still wishing Granger had finished me off. I had always been able to bounce back from anything, large or small. I had patiently waited out years of being slammed into lockers in high school, hardly ever missing a day of school. I had endured an angry father who drank too much and a mother who had just enough strength to maintain a working household, let alone take on my psychological issues. In New York, I had survived awful jobs and no jobs, shaky tenures with questionable roommates, endless rounds of futile auditioning, the heartbreaks of foolish young love, and even a mugging at gunpoint. From all of it, I had bounced back. I was like the Weeble, a toy that had been advertised for several years when I was a kid. Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. This recovery was proven to be more difficult because it seemed to take on the weight of all of those other issues, some of which had never been resolved. As for that defiant, the show must go on stance I had adopted for that performance in November, there had been no reviewers there to commend my performance and no reporters to follow up on my progress. I was yesterday's news, papery dry and blowing aimlessly in the momentary breezes. The Christmas season has always been my favorite time of year, but when it rolled around in 1994, I was in no mood for it. My mind was in a state of shock, and nothing, neither joyful nor tragic, could seem to pull me out of my cement-like day-to-day existence. If anyone had tried to talk to me about Christmas miracles, I'd have met him with at best a stone face, if not a scowl. After that first week of survivor's glee back in October, I was sinking down into the depths of something that was beyond the reach of even Rafe, my therapist. I didn't think it was possible, but the grind of my office job was worse than it had ever been, my eyes glazing over legal documents as I counted down the hours until the end of the day, only to go home and stare at the television screen. The trip back to Massachusetts for the holidays was my first out-of-town getaway since the stabbing. And while my parents' house in the woods on a dirt road was certainly getting out of the city, it promised to be anything but relaxing. My anger at my father hung over me like a shroud. Why hadn't he come to New York during my hour of greatest need? My siblings bickering over trivial matters threatened to make me come undone, a tightly wrapped Christmas prep package collapsing to reveal nothing inside. My fears were not unfounded. As I walked into the living room and plopped my things down, the pettiness was already starting. I looked to the sliding glass door on the far side of the room. Outside the door on the deck sat a plump 5-foot-high Christmas tree, sparkling with tinsel and multicolored lights. The wrapped gifts were piled on the other side of the door, inside. My sister Wendy said with a snort, Ma decided she didn't want to bother with putting on ornaments and vacuuming up pine needles this year. Doesn't that look dumb? I shrugged, smiled wanly, and took my luggage to my room. In November, I had met with the district attorney. My medical bills, over $10,000, were coming in, and I had no idea what to do. I asked the DA if I could sue Granger. He shrugged. You could only sue if someone like Donald Trump stabbed you. Someone with deep pockets. Donald was quite a celebrity in 1994, back then. There wasn't much to learn about Granger beyond what was in the newspaper accounts. I seem to remember that he was an aspiring screenwriter. He worked for a delivery service like FedEx. He had assaulted a city councilman the year before. He liked to ride his bike, but nothing about his family or where he came from. What could have been his motive? To make matters worse, one of the two police officers who tackled Granger an hour or so after he stabbed me, a heroic deed for which he was roundly praised in the press, committed suicide a few days before Christmas. I had met the officer in November when I gave testimony to the grand jury. He had been so young, polite, and compassionate. In addition to the tragedy of his loss, how would that affect my case? I don't remember much about the time leading up to Christmas Day. I spent a couple of long days curled up on the couch, looking at the tree lights and smelling the baking pies. We must have gone to the Christmas Eve service at the church we'd attended since I was a child. But I don't remember being moved. We certainly carried on our tradition of singing Christmas carols late into the night back home after the church service. That had always been a highlight at our house. My father would pull out the dog-eared Christmas book and we'd go through it from beginning to end. He'd play piano and we'd sing along to most of the 100 songs in the book. Immediate family and a few close friends would participate. My best friend Paula from my growing up years and her mother Jidge, who were like family, joined us every year. The evening would always start out reverently, but after a couple of hours and a fair amount of eggnog, the musicality would go right out the window. Paula and I would try to out-belt each other, and Jidge, a heavy smoker, would cough and rasp her way through the latter part of the evening. We'd all try to add jazz riffs and fancy endings to the simplest songs like Silent Night. Often we'd fall to our knees gasping for breath from laughing so hard at a particularly creative and ridiculous rendition of a classic. My father and I were more alike than not. When the going got tough, we knew how to perform. I have no particular memory of Christmas Eve sing-along of 1994. Surely it happened, and surely I carried on as usual, but my mind was elsewhere. I did not sleep much that night, and it wasn't because I was anxiously anticipating the arrival of Santa Claus. I got up early at the first light of day before anyone else in the house had stirred. I felt the need to gaze at the tree lights again. I tiptoed out of my room and walked into the living room. I was stunned by what I saw. A light snow was falling, and about an inch of fine powder had already fallen. The snow had softly blanketed the tree on the deck, and the glistening lights were now muted reds, blues, yellows, and greens. I stood alone staring at the tree, my hands hanging limply at my sides, tears creeping out of the sides of my eyes. Soon the tears were cascading down my cheeks, and I covered my face with my hands so that my gut-wrenching sobs would not wake up the household. In that moment, the feeble little tree that had been exiled to the cold porch became the most beautiful Christmas tree I had ever seen. No stocking stuffer, brightly wrapped gift, scrumptious pumpkin pie, or heartfelt song would come close to matching the gift of that tree in 1994. In the early hours of Christmas morning, a simple tree covered with colored snow became a symbol of peace and hope for me. My struggle to overcome the psychological damage of the October event would go on for at least another year, but that morning, in letting go of my grief, I was at last able to embrace life. I wanted to live. Feeling like I don't want to read an essay after that. I'm going to go to something a little different here. So I'm also a songwriter, and this is a song I wrote a couple of years ago, and I did kind of write it in honor of my parents. And we did a video of it. If you check out the video, you can see my parents dancing on the deck of where I now live. We filmed the video 2 years ago, so I did live there then as well. So I'm going to hope this works. I'm going to do this song. It's called Time Stands Still. And so some of you know that my parents, we've been in a 6-month struggle since my mom had a bad fall in December to get them into assisted living, and tomorrow is the big day. We are moving them to the Gables in Fitchburg. They are taking, my mother has long-term care insurance, thankfully, so that's going to pay for half of it. And it's a new chapter for everybody, which is both sad and happy, but we're hoping that this makes everybody's life a little easier. First light of day and it's morning, no sign of danger, no warning, just for you, just for me. It's t-shirts and faded jeans, just for you, just for me. It's t-shirts and faded jeans, got the earth and the sky and the money, but we got a future that's sunny. first light of day and it's morning. No sign of danger, no warning. Just for you, just for me. It's t-shirts and faded jeans. Just for you, just for me. It's t-shirts and faded jeans. Got the earth and... All right. You want me to try one more?
Yeah, try one more time.
All right, we're going to try line that track. Let's see if that does. You can sing along with me at this point. The first light of day and it's morning. No sign of danger, no warning. Just for you, just for me. It's t-shirts and faded jeans. Just for you, just for me. It's t-shirts and faded jeans. Got the earth and the... Alright, it's not gonna work. It's cutting out. What's it? The same spot. Exactly the same spot. You can stream it. Hear the song.
Your parents dance to that?
Yeah. So we filmed the video and had them dancing, and then we put in lots of pictures of like couples that have been together for a long time. Kim was one of them. Her husband is in the video as well. So check that out. All right. So we're at about the 7:15 mark. My thing lately, getting back into writing, very much thanks to this group, because I, was more focused on music, and now I'm back to the writing thing. But I've been blogging a lot in the last couple of years, and between the platforms of Medium and Substack, Medium is kind of a jumble of everything, but Substack is more about social and political issues. But I'm thinking the third book will be for next year, and it will be a collection of essays. I'll put them all, the essays in there with my thoughts on them and things like that. So yet something different to add to the Kevin book collection. All right, so now we're at the 15 minutes if people have questions or anything like that. Yes.
Are you afraid of what AI is going to come up with in grabbing stuff of yours off Substack or whatever and hijacking it and doing weird things with it?
I haven't thought about that.
My
Specifically.
son just came home with horror stories of things that happened to his friends.
Oh my gosh. I didn't even think about that. I'm afraid of AI generally, and there's somebody on Medium who started following me, so I followed him back out of politeness. And I read one of his essays, and it was very informative. But after reading the second or third of his essays, I was like, this is AI. Like, he's doing a whole blogging career with AI, because there was no nuance to it. There was no personality to it. Like, I couldn't tell who he was by that. So people are actually doing it and calling themselves writers, which is kind of frightening and scary, and yeah. And I work as an editor, a medical editor in my day job, and now they're starting to have seminars on AI. What a great tool this is. Like, join us for this seminar, and all of us editors are like, we're not going to that seminar. I'm not going to go to a seminar that's going to take us out of a job in a couple of years. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's a frightening thing.
Your book, Quarter Inch from My Heart, I was just blown away by the contrasts in that. Like when you first showed the attack, really, it's such a shit, such a startling thing. And I was blown away also by the fact that it seemed like almost like you don't know what's happening until it's happening. And I'm wondering, was it hard to write? Was it very hard to write?
So both of my books were relatively easy to write because I had a purpose with them. Like the first was I had to do it because it started off as a graduate thesis, and then I had to rewrite it to please my mentor. And actually, she was right; it did make a better book. It's actually like it's kind of funny. It's like I call it dark humor, but there's some serious underlying issues with Sally's addiction issues and the other stuff that she goes through, and Greg's this young naive guy trying to figure out how he's going to promote her career when she keeps doing, fucked up things, But it does have it's funny, and that was my mentor's comment when it was in third person. She said it's too dark in third person, but if Greg's telling the story, it's going to have lightness to it, and she was absolutely right about that. And then with a quarter inch, I can't remember how it was that I put those two stories together in the same book. But after the Maurice episode was over, I said, I gotta write this book, nobody's gonna believe this. And so that just like poured out of me. I remember a friend of mine, I grew up in Massachusetts, and I had never been to Provincetown, and that, it was April, and he was an accountant, and he had a little place in Provincetown, and it was beautiful April, it was a warm April, and he took me up there for a week, and I literally wrote that first draft in 1 week, because I was like, you ever see that movie with Diane Keaton where she's like madly typing out and bawling her eyes out while she's typing? I could relate to that, but that's what that was, the first draft, and then that was the Maurice thing. I think maybe after that I decided to mix in the other ones, because the other story, because there were two different stories, but that heart thing is kind of a quarter inch from my heart. Maurice was kind of a quarter inch from my heart, but not quite there, just like the knife was. Yeah, they weren't really. I'm having more of a struggle with writing long-form fiction and memoir now because I haven't landed on a purpose. I haven't landed on something that I really want to do that's compelling me to write. Yeah. But it can happen any moment. You suddenly land on an idea and furiously. But what I love about this group is it's keeping me writing every week, and the blogging is really been great. Because that was hard in the beginning, and now if I have an idea in my head about something I see on the news, I can sit down and write it in 2 hours. It builds a habit, and you're like, okay, 750-word essay, done. Yeah, probably some of your poems are like that too.
Go, it's there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does it feel different to write a song versus the essay or the or the memoir or the novel? Is it a different kind of energy or a different kind of juice, or is it the same creative juice coming out of you?
That's a great question. I think songs are more fun in a way because I love the wordplay. Poets know that. I love the wordplay, and I've always grown up listening to music. So if I hear music and I go, what phrase would fit in there? It usually starts with a phrase, maybe even a title of a song, and then I go back and recreate it. A lot of the songs that I've written in the last, since 2016, I was kind of out of the music business for a little while, for about almost 10 years, between 2006 and 16, because I went back to graduate school at age 40, and I started giving up music. And then it was one of my students in my writing classes, freshman writing class, a Russian student named Yura Griban, and we lived in the same neighborhood, so we would often see each other on the subway going home. And so he approached me, and we started talking, and it turns out he plays guitar, and he said, we should try writing songs sometime. And I was like, well, why don't we finish the semester first and see how you do? But we did, and to my surprise, he did call, and for a period of about 3 years, we were meeting every Saturday morning, and like the blogs, after a while, it just became like, we'd get so excited like when we came up with a good song. But then he went off, got married, and had a child, and he was basically done. I just actually texted him yesterday because I posted a song that we wrote, the Meryl Streep song, on my Facebook page. But, he doesn't seem to miss it, and good for him. It's a very hard business. All of this is very hard business. But up here, I'm having a harder time with the music. I've gone to a couple of open mics with Kim and stuff like that. But it's harder to find good quality musicians who want to work with you, who want to really buckle down and work with you. So that's been my challenge up here in terms of the songwriting and doing concerts and stuff like that. So.
Did you have any problems getting your books published? Did you have to send them to a lot of
So the novel was actually self-published. So that was a small company that's actually turned into a pretty big company, actually. That was self-published to just kind of get it out there and introduce myself to the world. The other one, I did find a small press out in San Diego that liked it. If any of you are looking to publish, you probably know this already, but if you go to, I used back then agentquery.com, and you can go there and find agents, and they tell you what they're looking for, if they like memoirs and stuff like that. I didn't find an agent, so then I went, they said, this kind of material won't sell, basically, the agents. It's all about, can you sell this? So then I looked at publishers, and if you look at publishers, usually they have their, what do you call it, the statement?
Mission statement?
Mission statement, yeah. They usually have their mission statement, what kind of things they're looking for, and I found that in Wisdom Moon Publishing, that was perfect for the book, and so I sent it to them, and then they said, yes, we'll take it, and then it had to go through, as Melissa knows, the editing process, the rewriting process, all of that. So was happy about that. I should say that just a couple years ago, Wisdom Moon went out of business. They were on their way to becoming a nonprofit, and then the owner died, and of course it was a small operation. I'm still in touch with one of the administrators. So I have not been sent any royalties for 3 years, and I don't know when I will. But if you do read it, or if you bought it online and you read it, I will ask as a favor, if you want to write an Amazon review, because I'm seeking another publisher to pick it up, so the more reviews, the better. And that, just helps when they are looking at it. So, and that goes for all of us, writing reviews for each other.
So when are you going to get into screenwriting? Your writing invokes such imagery, and I've told you that for more than 10 years now.
I know. Yeah, I think the memoir would be a hard one to do for film. But it's been, look at that movie Moonlight. I thought that was going to be hard for film. I do think that Off the Charts would make a really good film.
Fabulous.
You have a director in New York who read it and thinks so too, but he's another poor director who's looking for funding himself and all of that. But the reason I haven't is because I've been advised by many people that to do screenwriting, if you don't have an agent and you're just floundering out here like a lot of us, you don't spend all that time doing the screenwriting. You write a treatment and then you try to sell the treatment and then let them do the screenwriting. Or if they want to hire you to help with the screenwriting, but do the treatment, because Hollywood can't be bothered with reading anything. That's basically it. They just want to see the treatment, they like the idea, then they'll greenlight it, and then you can get on with the screenplay and all that. But yeah, so I've got to write the treatment. Yeah. Connections. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much for listening. We have a few minutes where we can chat. If you want to buy a book or use it or anything like that, you can. And then we'll start the open mic in about 10 minutes.